Chapter 31. First visit to Olympus. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Staring at the towering mountain in front of them, Apollo and Artemis were silent. After spending some time with their maternal grandparents and accompanying their mother Leto, the two siblings came together to the symbol of the divine court on Mount Olympus. Apollo, what do you think those gods will think of us? Artemis seemed a little uneasy. Apollo smiled at her. I think it's envy and jealousy. After all, you have such a wonderful brother like me, and I have such a wonderful sister like you. How can they not be envious and jealous? Artemis rolled her eyes at him, feeling a lot calmer. My brother is right, brilliant gods like us will be side-lined everywhere we go. She calmed down and walked in front of him, her body filled with divine power fluctuations that were almost at the peak of the upper god realm. Several years ago, she had already reached the upper god realm, and with the help of the heart of the deep sea, she had recently made even more rapid progress and was only half step away from reaching the top level below the main god. As for Apollo, his divine power also reached an extreme, only half a step away from truly entering the realm of the main god. There is a god-level treasure chest in the temple of the god of Mount Olympus. If I get it, it will not be a problem to be promoted to the main god. Apollo glanced at the system map. He had recently refreshed a lot of treasure chests, most of which were on Mount Olympus. There were close to 20 treasure chests on this sacred mountain, most of which were primary and secondary treasure chests. There were 2 advanced treasure chests, one in Athena's temple and one in the shrine of Demeter, the goddess of agriculture. But none of these could be compared to the god-grade treasure chest in the temple of the king of gods. In that game, both advanced and god-level chests were 2 completely different levels. Advanced treasure chests tend to have 2-star treasures, the god level should have 3 stars, the 2-star corresponds to the main god realm, then the 3-star should be. Apollo's eyes were a little hot. Apollo and Artemis walked to the foot of Olympus, and a road covered with flowers suddenly emerged from the towering mountain in front of them while playing cheerful music. A black-haired young man with wings descended from the sky and said solemnly, I'm here to pass the will of the king of the gods, and welcome Artemis and Apollo, the children of the goddess Leto, to the temple of the gods, and the gods will meet there. Apollo gazed up at the dark-haired god with a smile on his lips, and his eyes lifted. Are you Hermes, child of the goddess Maya? The black-haired god with wings said indifferently, I prefer to be called the messenger of the king of gods or the messenger of the gods. Apollo smiled, remembering what he looked like. Hermes, the messenger of the gods, was one of the 12 main gods of Mount Olympus and the son of Zeus. He was the god of commerce and travel, the protector of livestock and thieves, the god of deception, and the guide of the undead into the underworld. A very famous main god. More importantly, he was also Zeus' most trusted and confidant son. Even when he went out to contribute to the goddess, he basically took him with himself. Artemis, Apollo, come with me. Hermes grinned, naturally understanding their thoughts, and walked ahead. Apollo and Artemis followed. I feel that he is a dishonest god. Artemis pointed at Hermes on the way and whispered to Apollo. Apollo blinked. Of course, he was the god of theft and deception, it would be strange if he was honest. After following Hermes halfway to Mount Olympus, a number of beautiful nymphs gradually appeared around. Some of them were so bold that they waved flowers and shouted. Look, Lord Hermes. He's really young and handsome. The god behind him is golden-haired. He looks more handsome and elegant than Lord Hermes. Well, that goddess is also very beautiful and dignified, but she looks fierce with a bow and arrow on her back. I heard that the 2 children of His Majesty the King of God and Goddess Leto, Artemis and Apollo, are going to Olympus recently and can be personally guided by Hermes. Are they these 2 people? The nymphs got excited all of a sudden. It is said that Apollo and Artemis, the god of light and the goddess of hunting, respectively, are main gods who have visions at birth. That's right, especially Apollo, I heard that he killed Pai Tong at the age of 10, suppressed the whirlpool god Achilles at the age of 20, defeated god Ares, and joined forces with the goddess Hecate to fight the oceanic god. Wow, it's amazing. He looks so handsome and elegant. I didn't expect him to be so powerful. I'm afraid goddess Athena is nothing more than that. Lord Apollo is still single now, right? I want to find a way to marry him, even if I can't be his wife. It's good to be his lover for a while and have a child for him. An outstanding god like Lord Apollo, how could he possibly look up to a low-level nymph like us? At least, she has to be a goddess to get his eyes on her. How do you know if you don't try it? His Majesty the King of God also often visits mortals. The goddess Artemis is also good. She looks so pure and wonderful, has a sense of natural beauty. Yeah, the love of the opposite bloodline is fake. Only the same bloodline is true love. I want to be a maid for the goddess Artemis. Before actually stepping into Mount Olympus, Apollo felt the openness of the atmosphere there. A beautiful nymph glanced at his body and face with bold eyes. At the same time, many nymphs looked timidly at Artemis. It was not easy to walk on the mountainside when Hermes spoke out. Above is the residence of the gods, and the top is the palace of the king of the gods. God Father has already prepared the gods to welcome you. Apollo and Artemis cast their eyes, and handsome and beautiful gods and goddesses suddenly appeared in the mist-shrouded sky. First of all, 9 graceful and cheerful maidens emerged, standing side by side in the clouds, dancing lightly. Some played the lyre, some recited poetry, and some sang. They were the embodiment of art, a source of inspiration. Amidst the lively song and dance, Apollo and Artemis could not help but stop in their tracks. Chapter 32. The Stove Goddess and the Goddess of Justice. You are listening at novelfull.audio. They are the Muses, the daughters of the Father God and Goddess of Memory, and the source of joy in Olympus, an essential part of all the festivals. Hermes also stopped and introduced these 9 beautiful, lively, and passionate girls to the 2 of them. Apollo nodded slightly. In Greek mythology, Apollo, the god of light, was also the god of art, and these 9 muses were actually his gods later. That handsome boy, Apollo, he has a refined and artistic sentiment, he is the embodiment of light, and Olympus shines because of him. Silver-haired Artemis, she is the symbol of purity, the embodiment of nature, and she has brought her beauty to the home of the gods. After enjoying the performance of the muses, they continued on their way. A bright fire flickered in front, showing gentle warmth. A beautiful and dignified woman sat quietly on the cloud and smiled honestly. Goddess Hestia. Hermes bowed respectfully to the woman. Apollo and Artemis then responded and followed suit with a salute. Hestia, the goddess of the stove, was the eldest daughter of the second-generation king of gods Cronus, the eldest sister of the king of gods Zeus, the sea emperor Poseidon, and King Hades. With a distinguished status, she was one of the main gods of Mount Olympus, and her strength was not inferior to the 3 brothers. Unlike her 2 sisters, Demeter, the goddess of agriculture, and Hera, the queen of the gods, this goddess of the hearth was also one of the few virgin goddesses of Olympus, a symbol of purity. In Greek mythology, there were 3 virgin goddesses, the goddess of wisdom, Athena, and the hunting goddess Artemis. They were all famous, but in terms of status, Hestia had high status all of them. You are Leto's children. Hestia glanced at Apollo and Artemis with a trace of pity on her face. Aunt Hestia. Apollo and Artemis stepped forward. After watching them carefully for a moment, Hestia stood up and walked over to Artemis. Young Artemis, I can feel that you have a pure heart. Don't be infected by the filth here in Olympus. Artemis nodded quietly. Apollo, you do the same. Hestia said in a low voice. Zeus and Hera are too heartless to you. Take care of yourself in Olympus in the future, and come to me if you need help. Thank you. Apollo and Artemis said gratefully. Hestia waved her hand, "Okay, the gods behind are still waiting for you." After that, they continued on their way. Hermes said on the way, "Goddess Hestia specially came to see you. She rarely appeared in Olympus, even the father god respects her very much. When Hera actually persecuted him at the beginning, Hestia didn't care about her nephew. Maybe the persecution was not strong enough." A bright light suddenly bloomed in the distance, and two majestic chariots drove in the sky. One was burning with golden flame, and the other exuded icy chill. "This is the sun chariot and the moon chariot, driven by the topmost main gods, sun god Helios and the goddess of the moon Selene, alternating day and night." As Hermes spoke, Apollo saw the two gods seated in each divine chariot. He knew that they were the sun god Helios and the moon goddess Selene, who were often identical to him and his sister Artemis. The sun god and moon goddess were changing shifts, and the three continued on their way. Not long after they walked, a magnificent temple appeared in front of them. The open door was covered with a red carpet of flowers and brocade, and a group of beautiful goddesses was singing. On both sides of the temple, there were many attractive gods and goddesses standing on each side. They all turned their attention to the door. At the highest point of the temple, two figures were wearing crowns. They were the king of the gods, Zeus, and the queen of the gods, Hera. Hermes went in first and saluted Zeus. "Respected king of the gods, I have brought Apollo and Artemis as you will." When communicating with Apollo and Artemis, he called Zeus father god, but in official matters, he called him the king of gods. Apollo suddenly understood why Zeus trusted Hermes. He kept the two identities of son and vassal very separate. When he was not officially doing things, he was the son of Zeus, but when he was ordered to act, he was the messenger of the gods and the main god of Mount Olympus. Zeus was delighted with his attitude and ordered, "Introduce them to the gods first." Hermes took the lead and walked to Apollo and Artemis, pointing to the surrounding gods. "This is the goddess Themis, one of the 12 Titans and the second wife of His Majesty the King of Gods, the embodiment of justice and order, the most impartial mediator of Olympus. With His Majesty the King of Gods, she has 6 daughters, the 3 goddesses of time and order and the 3 goddesses of fate." The first goddess he introduced was a dignified goddess with a white cloth covering her eyes, a balance in one hand, and a sword in the other. Both Apollo and Artemis had heard her name and immediately gave a respectful salute. As for the goddess of justice, Themis was actually the sister of Zeus' father, Cronus, with a noble status and fairness in doing things, and was admired by all gods. She was blindfolded by a white cloth, she never recognized people, only the symbol of justice in her hands. Themis didn't smile and nodded at their salute. After Themis was Demeter, the goddess of agriculture, who was also the sister of Zeus and the sister of Hestia. She had a daughter with Zeus, the future queen of the underworld, Persephone. Apollo did not see Persephone, and it was estimated that she might still be small. Behind Demeter was the beautiful Athena. Goddess of wisdom, goddess of war, today she was not wearing armor but a bright dress, long skirt trailing the ground. Her heroic look was a few times less than earlier, and she was more feminine and seductive. She laughed lightly at Apollo, but when she saw Artemis, she let out a sneer. "Apollo, is this your sister, and can she compare with me? I think in a few days, she will obediently recognize me as a sister. You'd better take the initiative to call me sister." Apollo's face froze. He didn't understand what kind of wrong medicine Athena took. Her behavior was completely different from the previous 2 times. However, he suddenly noticed that when Athena sneered at Artemis, Zeus, who was sitting high above, seemed to have a lot of calmness in his eyes. He immediately understood at once. Pretending to be angry, he walked up to Artemis. "Goddess Athena, I appreciate the help you gave me earlier, but that doesn't mean you can mock my sister." Chapter 33. The Enthronement of the Main God. You are listening at novelfull.audio. "Athena and Apollo, I just told you last time to stay close. Why are you arguing here this time? Sitting on the throne, Zeus' face showed dissatisfaction. Apollo and Athena then backed away, but Zeus noticed that there was still dissatisfaction in their eyes. It seems that Athena dislikes Artemis, and Apollo is very defensive of his sister, which is great. Zeus laughed inwardly. Athena and Apollo were both excellent gods. If the relationship continued to be good, what if they joined forces to create their own rebellion? However, he still had some doubts in his heart. Athena had always been wise, and today's performance was too reckless. Hermes continued to introduce the goddess behind Athena. She was a beautiful goddess with a beautiful body, curves, and long hair. At first glance, Apollo felt an extraordinary feminine charm emanating from this goddess. The glamorous facial features, snow-white skin, slender legs, and soft arms, all seemed to be the embodiment of beauty in reality. Hermes said with an obsession in his eyes, "This is Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty." Apollo bowed gracefully to her. "Goddess Aphrodite, you are truly the embodiment of beauty and love. I have never seen such a graceful being as you." His praise surprised Aphrodite, and she smiled. "Apollo, you are really sweet with your words." "No, I'm just expressing the truth." Apollo smiled. Listening to his words, Artemis beside him felt strange. Aphrodite was indeed a very feminine goddess. Even if she was equally beautiful, she had to admit it. But she knew that although her younger brother was not an emotionless sage, he was definitely not someone who would be touched by a bit of beauty. As a twin spirit, she could feel that her brother didn't have too many waves in his heart. Why did he have to be so pompous in his praise? She suddenly noticed that when Apollo praised Aphrodite, the corner of his eyes swept at the goddess of wisdom, who had an evil tone before. Immediately, there was dissatisfaction and anger in the eyes of the goddess of wisdom, and the angle was right on the throne above. It turns out that when the flame called jealousy burns, any great wisdom will also be stained with dust. Seeing the dissatisfaction in Athena's eyes, Zeus instantly understood. It turned out that his daughter, who had always been arrogant and proud, was still a woman after all and would be emotional. This makes sense. Looking at Athena and Apollo again, he felt much more at ease. When Apollo praised Aphrodite, Ares, standing on the other side, snorted. Last time, Hera promised to give Aphrodite to him as long as he got rid of Apollo. But he failed. How could he have the face to ask about it? Damn Apollo, not only did you defeat me, you are planning to snatch Aphrodite from me now. He growled inwardly. Seeing his unhappy mood, Hermes simply omitted him during the introduction. He introduced an ugly, limping male god next to him with little change in his eyes. This is Hephaestus, the god of fire and craftsmanship. The most skillful craftsman of the gods, and a large part of the gods' artifacts are made by him. Apollo greeted him. Hephaestus looked at him but did not answer. It seemed that there was nothing in this world that could touch him. It took a lot of time for Hermes to introduce other gods. Apollo took Artemis and greeted these gods one by one. The gods also had a preliminary impression of these two children of the king of gods. Apollo is a handsome and polite male god, sunny and elegant, while Artemis is much colder and doesn't like words. All of the gods felt this way. After the introduction, Hermes respectfully bowed to Zeus and left this temporary rank of god. Artemis, Apollo. With a lightning spear in his hand, Zeus stood up solemnly and called out the names of the two. Under the watchful eyes of the gods, the king of the gods said solemnly. The gods also know each other. My son and daughter are perfect gods. They have been in exile before. It was my negligence that caused them a lot of suffering. Apollo glanced at Hera next to him as he said this. After Apollo and his sister entered, the gods, who had not spoken from the beginning, grunted violently and lightly. Zeus raised his lightning spear high and continued, in order to make up for them and to make Olympus more prosperous, I am determined to enthrone Apollo and Artemis as one of the new 12 main gods of Mount Olympus. Hearing these words, the present gods and goddesses were surprised. The main god was a realm, but the position of the 12 main gods of Olympus was a symbol of status and power. Even Zeus himself was still one of the 12 main gods. The system of the 12 main gods originated from the divine court of the previous generation. The second king of the gods, Cronus, led the 11 Titans brothers, and after overthrowing his father Uranus, in order to show that although he became the king of the gods, his status was still equal to them, he developed the system of the 12 main gods. The 11 brothers and sisters were all crowned as the main god so that it would look like everyone was of the same status. After Zeus overthrew him, they also followed this system, although at the beginning, Hades, the king of the underworld, was unwilling to serve as the main god, which made this system a joke. However, the position of the 12 main gods was still a symbol of the status of the gods' power. Most of the main gods of Olympus today were either the wives and lovers of Zeus or his sons and daughters of Zeus. It was not surprising that Zeus would crown Apollo and Artemis as the new main gods. The gods were amazed that he acted in such a hurry. Apollo and Artemis were born less than 100 years ago, and their strengths have not yet reached the realm of main gods, and they just ascended Olympus. Shouldn't he wait for a while and then, later, when they reach the main god as adults and proceed with the enthronement? In the beginning, Ares, Hermes, Hephaestus, and Athena were all like this. Regardless of what the gods thought, Zeus raised his lightning spear, looked solemnly at Apollo, and proclaimed in a loud voice, "Artemis, my beautiful and pure daughter, I praise you as the goddess of hunting, sitting high on the top of Olympus." Under the watchful eyes of the gods, Artemis slowly walked to Zeus. Zeus looked at her with a smile. In an instant, a light enveloped Artemis. Her aura surged up, breaking through to the peak of the upper gods, and her body bathed in silvery white divine light. At this moment, whether it was the sky or the earth, the ocean or the underworld, all the gods perceived it. A new throne of gods rose in Olympus. Looking at the glorious elder sister above, a smile appeared on the corner of Apollo's mouth. Suddenly, he saw a small golden box next to the throne of Zeus. That was a god-level treasure chest. Chapter 34. God-level treasure chest. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Staring at the god-level treasure chest next to the throne of Zeus, Apollo kept his expression unchanged. After finishing the enthronement of Artemis, under the eyes of the gods, Zeus turned his attention to him. His lightning spear lifted lightly, and the king of gods solemnly said, "Apollo, the sun who makes me proud, you have the splendor of gold, are the embodiment of light, and will surely lead in new glory to Olympus. The gods bear witness that I will make him the god of light and sit high in Olympus." The gods of heaven and earth once again felt a surging throne of infinite light rising over Olympus. Looking at Artemis as she walked down, Apollo slowly walked toward Zeus. The dazzling golden light bloomed on him, setting off his tall and slender figure, and his handsome cheeks were like the perfect artwork, reflecting in the temple of the gods. Looking at the golden figure walking up, Hera behind Zeus was full of jealousy and hatred, and her white arms tightly grasped the armrest of the throne. Zeus's face was full of smiles, and a brilliant light enveloped Apollo. In an instant, Apollo felt that his own bloodline power had been activated a lot and was only a hair's breadth away from being promoted to the main god. It seems that the so-called position of the main god is not entirely a vain position. It is related to some special rules. Is it the so-called authority of the king of gods? Apollo's mind turned, he suddenly leaned down and bowed to Zeus. Apollo has seen Father God. The gods were surprised by his sudden salute, but no one noticed that when Apollo leaned over, his one hand quickly grabbed the golden box beside the throne. At the same time, he used space magic to put away the treasure chest. "Don't be too polite." Zeus lifted him up with a smile. However, there was a strange look in his eyes. He noticed that Apollo's eyes just now were swept toward his throne. Could it be that he is coveting my throne? With this thought, Zeus's heart sank. But keeping a smile on his face, he grabbed Apollo's hand and walked over to Artemis. Raising both of their hands high, he shouted to the gods, "Let us celebrate for the god of light and the goddess of the hunt." All of a sudden, the gods echoed and cheered. The 9 muses appeared and danced and sang happily. Tables of wines were also arranged outside, and many nymphs served quietly, and a grand banquet began immediately. The banquet lasted for several days before Apollo and Artemis had the opportunity to come to their temple. Bedodem, Lord Apollo, this temple of light was built years ago by the king of gods who ordered Kratos, the god of power, the subordinate god of Lord Hephaestus, to build it. Several nymphs took Apollo to his temple of light. This temple was located not far from the top of Mount Olympus. The whole structure was made of gold. It was tall and magnificent, and it emitted a brilliant light. After walking in, there was a vast space. First, there was the main hall used to receive guests. There were 4 or 5 smaller side halls next to it and a garden. The garden was full of flowers and plants, and behind it was a place to live and a training ground for exercise. After roughly understanding it, Apollo sent the nymphs back and went to the bedroom. After closing the doors and windows and setting up a few magic formations, he took out the golden treasure chest. God-level treasure chest. Apollo's eyes were solemn when he looked at the small golden box in front of him. His willingness to visit Olympus so quickly was mainly for this God-level treasure chest. Now was the time to accept the results. He carefully opened the treasure chest. In the dark room, a golden light suddenly flashed. At the same time, the system's voice appeared in mind. Ding, you opened a God-level treasure chest and obtained Divine Origin Crystal X2600, Oradro's Etheric Divine Body Method, 3 stars, and the Divine Artifact Burning Sword, 3 stars. Hearing the sound of the system, Apollo was shocked. It opens up the 3 stars, the Etheric Divine Body Method, and the Burning Sword. Isn't the name Oradro the name of the sun god in that game, in some torture chamber of the world of the gods? Remembered that torture chamber was countless times more vast than the continent of Arago, and the one who rules the world was the 9 pillars god. The sun god Oradro was one of the 9 pillars gods and the king of the pantheon, the strongest god born at the beginning of creation, who led the gods to defeat the serpent of chaos, create the pantheon, quell the scourge of the black stone, and overthrow the shadow kingdom. And his most powerful thing was the sun god's body that claimed to contain the power of billions of stars in the universe, also called Etheric Divine Body. The memory of the gods made Apollo recall everything at once, and his expression became excited. In that game setting, the etheric divine body was the supreme divine body that could encompass all the energies of all things in the universe. After cultivating it to the extreme, it could turn every cell of the body into a star or even a star system, and the body would form a universe. And the treasure chests opened over the years have made him discover that once they appear in this world, the effects of the things in the treasure chests were entirely in line with the game settings. Etheric divine body, and this burning sword, although I have not heard of it, it has the same 3-star rating. It is not worse than the etheric divine body. A mottled, rusty sword suddenly appeared in Apollo's hand. If you just observe the appearance, I am afraid that even mortals will dislike this sword. But after holding it in his hand, Apollo suddenly saw a world floating in the void. Its size was only a half smaller than that of the Greek world, and there were countless creatures in it, both ordinary and transcendent beings. These beings lived carefree in that world for countless thousands of years. Suddenly one day, a dappled rusty sword flew from outside the sky. Like a meteor, it penetrated the sky and the earth, and suddenly the whole world burned, an endless flame rose from the rusty sword. The blazing light spread all over the world. For 9 days and nights, that world was completely plunged into a sea of fire, and as early as the 3rd day, all life was extinct. And on the night of the 9th day, the whole world began to extinguish, turning into eternal ashes in the vast void. Only the mottled rust sword flew to the next target in the darkness. This is an artifact that can destroy the world. Apollo's hand shook suddenly, and he stared at the rusty and mottled long sword in his hand and was silent for a long time. After a while, he carefully put the sword away and decided never to use it easily. It was no laughing matter if it did destroy the world. After putting away the rusty sword, he picked up the divine source crystals that appeared in front of him and at the same time, recalled the cultivation method of the etheric divine body in his mind and muttered. It seems that the etheric divine body method needs the assistance of the power of the stars. Maybe I can go to Astrea for help. Don't worry, these source crystals are enough for me to be promoted to the main god, and I will spend some time to promote. Chapter 35. Promotion and Etheric Divine Body. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In Mount Olympus. Outside the Temple of Light, several beautifully dressed nymphs kept looking at the magnificent golden palace in front of them with bored faces. Sisters, you say that it was more than 10 years ago Lord Apollo came to Olympus. He has hardly ever come out to show his face. Yeah, even the goddess Artemis and Athena didn't even show up. Whoops, I could have tried everything to get the chance to serve Lord Apollo in the first place, so why didn't they even give me a chance to get close to him? A nymph said sadly. TSK, don't be crazy. How could such a noble and elegant existence like Lord Apollo fall in love with you? Several nymphs around immediately laughed at her. This nymph didn't care. Of course, I am afraid that only a noble gods like Athena can be worthy of Lord Apollo. I only hope that one day, Lord Apollo will be shot by Lord Eros' golden arrow and have a good night with me. Then I will be satisfied. The magnificent temple in the distance suddenly vibrated when several people were talking and laughing. Sisters, look. The nymphs opened their eyes wide and saw that the tall and majestic temple of light was bursting with infinite light. The splendid divine light spread across the sky, and the vast sky was dyed golden in an instant. At this moment, the entire Olympus was shocked by this brilliant light. One of the gods gazed up at the sky, and an expression of surprise appeared on his face. This is the vision of the gods ascending. Such strong light and divine power. Is it the god of light? That can't be right. He should have been promoted to the main god long ago if he could defeat Ares and fight the oceanic lord. Moreover, this phenomenon far exceeds the level of a normal main god. He can't possibly be promoted to primordial god. The gods were wondering in their hearts. The vision in the sky continued. Below, the brilliant golden light filled the world, rendering the vast sky like a golden dream. The dazzling light blocked the brilliance of Helios' solar chariot sailing the sky, and mortals on earth were surprised to find that the sun disappeared. Infinite golden light replaced the sun and illuminated the earth. They fell to their knees and bowed up in panic. And at some point, a handsome figure wearing a white robe with dazzling golden hair emerged within the infinite light. He looked down on the mortals of the earth with golden eyes as if the handsome face of the most exquisite sculpture, with a solemn smile. I am the god of light, and my light shines on the world. Suddenly, the golden light in the sky turned into golden rain, dripping down from the sky and nourishing the earth. The mortals were delighted to find that the soil in the fields suddenly became fertile, and the crops grew wildly and were soon full of fruit. The great god of light, you are the most dazzling star in the sky, you are the symbol of harvest and beauty, you are the divine embodiment of the gods, the mortals prayed excitedly, and a priest created the honorific name of the prayer on the spot, which only gods of exalted status were entitled to have. On Mount Olympus, the gods heard the prayers of mortals, and envy appeared on their faces. In particular, Helios, who was still driving the sun god chariot in the sky, had a high status. But he was a titan who had followed Cronus to overthrow Zeus' throne. Although he was lucky not to be infiltrated into Tartarus after his defeat, he became a marginal figure in the divine court, and mortals rarely worshipped the dignified sun god. Now, he heard in the sky that there were ignorant mortals who used sun god to worship Apollo. This was clearly like he did not exist. Damned son of Zeus! Driving the chariot of the sun god, Helios glanced angrily at the blonde figure still standing in the sky and walked into the distance. On Mount Olympus, many gods continued to gaze at the sky. With golden rain falling on the earth, the light from the sky gradually subsided. The golden figure flying out of the magnificent temple of light was becoming clearer and more precise. Under the dazzling brilliance, the blonde boy, who looked only 15 or 16 years old, had an elegant and handsome face with a severe expression and a pair of dazzling eyes appearing at the sky like stars. What a beautiful god! Many goddesses exclaimed. At the highest point of Olympus, the king of gods sitting high on the throne slowly raised his eyes, and there was a flash of light in his pupils. What level has he been promoted to? Even I can't see it. He was amazed. Looking at Apollo earlier, he could feel that he had always been the divine power of the upper god, but since he could defeat Ares, he was definitely not the upper god. He should cover it with some treasure or magic. But when he perceived it now, he could only see a golden fireball standing there. No, I have to find a way to test it. Hera is a perfect pawn, and Helios, Zeus pondered for a while and quietly left the temple of the king of God. In the temple of light, Apollo restrained his power. The main god of third rank, it's worth spending so many divine origin crystals, and the etheric divine body has also completed the initial casting. This thing needs more resources. Apollo had a toothache. Without the accumulation of Hecate, he reached the third rank of the main god at once, consuming thousands of his divine origin crystals. But just the foundation building of the etheric divine body consumed twice that amount of divine origin crystals. The good thing is that the reward for such consumption is also stronger, and I can feel that every cell of my etheric divine body is now filled with majestic power. The power of the Greek gods was primarily manifested in their own priesthood and authority. Although the physical body of the gods was very powerful, it was far weaker than divine power. Even for a god of war like Ares, during the confrontation with Apollo, he relied on the power of the war domain rather than melee combat. But after completing the initial foundation of the etheric divine body, the power of my god body alone is now enough to fight against any main god. And the etheric divine body is not just physical power, and its essence is the realization of a kind of a ruler, the most basic and most powerful ruler in the world. Chapter 36. The Primordial Domain, Athena's Reminder. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 36. The Primordial Domain, Athena's Reminder. There was a gleam of wisdom in Apollo's eyes. He had a profound knowledge of the nature of divine power after having magical attainment at the level of a great magician. The gods have divine power and authority because the bloodline conforms to the most basic rules of the world and can use the power of rules. And the etheric divine body is itself a kind of power of rule, and it is the accumulation of energy. Gazing at the dark room in front of him, he said in a deep voice. After the initial casting of the etheric divine body, I can feel that my bloodline is more in tune with the rules, and I am almost ready to complete the metamorphosis and reach the primordial domain. But I can feel that to truly set foot in the primordial domain, perhaps the pure power of bloodline is not enough. Suddenly, he raised his head. The main god holds the corresponding authority and condenses the world of the domain. Perhaps the primordial gods are authority and rule themselves, and they don't need the power of rules at all. They are the source of the rules themselves. A soft power suddenly filled Apollo's palm. It was neither divine power nor magical power. By combining the etheric divine body and magic knowledge, I have actually derived a new kind of power, which he can cultivate by exercising the body and absorbing the energy between heaven and earth. Well, let's call it Do-Chi. Apollo said while looking at the energy ball in his hand. The portal opened, and he walked out of the Temple of Light. A beautiful figure appeared in front of him. Congratulations, you have truly been promoted to the main god, and the momentum shook Olympus. I'm more curious about how many ranks of the main god you've reached. Apollo quietly gazed at the heroic girl with radiant blonde hair in front of him. Athena smiled slightly. You can guess. At the same time, there was a little doubt in her eyes. Why is it that when I perceive you with my wisdom authority, all I can see is a searing, burning flame? Something seems to have changed in your divine body. Apollo also smiled and replied. You can also guess. Suddenly, he suggested, speaking of which, I haven't been to your palace yet. Do you mind showing me around? He didn't forget that there was an advanced treasure chest displayed in Athena's temple. Athena was slightly surprised, but she didn't refuse. The two of them flew into the sky. When the gods saw the two standing side by side, they could not help but exclaim. What a good pair of gods! It turns out that goddess Athena has been a virgin goddess because she did not meet such an excellent god. Like Lord Apollo earlier. Tisk, isn't it just good? Looking. It turns out that goddess Athena is so superficial. Some gods also said sourly. He also said. I have heard that the goddess Athena and Artemis are very much at odds. Apollo has just been promoted this time, and instead of meeting the goddess Artemis first, he first talked to the goddess Athena. Do you think there will be some show to watch later? The discussions of the gods did not affect Apollo and Athena at all. The temple of the god of light and the temple of the goddess of wisdom was actually not far away. The two of them soon arrived. Seeing the two people walking side by side from a distance, standing at the door of the goddess of wisdom, a pair of beautiful and strangely beautiful goddess of victory Nike with pure white wings, her mouth could not help cheering. Goddess Athena, it's okay that you went to see him. Why did you bring someone back? She gazed at Apollo with a fierce gaze as a young lion who had been robbed of her beloved toy. Apollo looked a little strange. After entering Olympus, he had heard a lot about Athena. After all, this goddess of wisdom was too legendary and dazzling. One of them was related to Nike. Nike, the goddess of victory, was actually Hecate's cousin, and her father, Pallas, the god of war strategy, was the brother of Hecate's father, Perseus, the god of destruction. The Titans had three top. Wise men at the time. They were Metis, the goddess of wisdom, Prometheus, the prophet, and Pallas, the god of war strategy. Among them, Metis and Prometheus both helped Zeus in the Titan war and dealt with Cronus. Only Pallas stood on the side of the Titans as the commander, commanding the Titans to fight the Zeus brothers. It could be said that he was the brain of Cronus during the Titan war. But it was strange that after the victory in the Titan war, Zeus did not throw him into Tartarus. On the contrary, the other two wise men who supported him, Metis and Prometheus, both ended miserably. As the daughter of Pallas, Nike, the goddess of victory, did not hesitate to break with her father and side with Zeus during the Titans' war. Because victory will only stand on the side of the victor. After Zeus became the king of gods and rewarded the gods who helped him, Nike was also a significant hero. However, she did not accept the enthronement. It was only later, when Athena was born, that she suddenly volunteered to serve as Athena's subordinate god. The wings of victory will always accompany the light of wisdom, she said to Zeus. Generally, the gods were subordinate to the main god, and only Nike was the subordinate god of Athena. Because she was never just Athena's subordinate but also her best friend and closest comrade. But she was so eager to follow Athena, which caused some rumors in Olympus. Many gods said that Nike actually liked the same sex, and it was because of the seduction of the goddess of wisdom, Metis, that she joined the side of Zeus in the Titans' war. And now she was accompanying her daughter. This shouldn't be true, Apollo pondered in his heart and looked at Nike. Nike also glared back at him. Stop it, Nike, and prepare some tea for our guest. Athena greeted. Only then did Nike reluctantly leave. When she left, Athena then took Apollo to the big hall inside. Looking around, she suddenly became serious. You have to pay more attention in the future. If you find something unusual, be careful. Apollo frowned and said, Why do you say that? Athena stared at him and sighed softly. The changes in your divine body are very strange. Since I can no longer see your details, I think our Father God should not be able to. Anything beyond his grasp will never be tolerated, so that you may face the stare of fate next. From the gaze of fate, you mean? Apollo's pupils shrank. The Three Goddesses of Destiny. Chapter 37. The Gaze of Fate. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The three goddesses of destiny, Atropos, Clotho, and Lachesis, who are the daughters of the goddess Themis. Since they were born, they have been secluded in the temple of the goddess of destiny outside Olympus, and only a few gods have seen them. The temple of the goddess of destiny is a forbidden place for the gods. Except for our Father God, no gods can set foot there, including their mother, goddess Themis. Athena looked serious. Although I don't know their exact situation, to be able to get involved with the word destiny is not an ordinary existence. Apollo's expression was very calm. Athena reminded. Now he will test you at best, so just be careful. Apollo nodded and said nothing. Glancing at the depth of the temple of Athena, he suddenly smiled and said, "Can you take me to your room?" Athena was stunned with a strange expression. But she still nodded and led Apollo to the inside of the temple. It was said to be a place to rest. In fact, the gods did not need sleep at all. Athena's bed was very neat, and it seemed that she had never used it. The huge room was spotless, and a large bookshelf full of books took up the most space. Next to the bookshelf was a table with several books with reading marks. Apollo noticed that one of the top books, the title of which was Strategies for Divine Warfare, was signed by the author as Pallas. My favorite is the writings of Lord Pallas. No one can surpass him in commanding the battle of the gods, and the failure of the Titian War was not a failure of his command, but the situation. Athena sighed gently. What about Prometheus? I heard he used to have a perfect relationship with you. Apollo asked. Hearing this name, Athena was suddenly silent. After a while, she said, "If Lord Pallas is good at combat and strategy, then Prometheus, the prophet, is the wisest sage. He is a great teacher who can bring guidance to all life and reveal light in the midst of darkness." One of his most impressive quotes to me was, "The body is a cage of spirit, the world is a cage of body, and every one of us is a prisoner." That's what he told me before being chained to the Caucasus Mountains. Apollo frowned. The body is the cage of the spirit, the world is the cage of the body. It is a philosophical sentence. As long as living in this world, each of us is in prison. Then how can we open this cage and gain true freedom? Athena whispered, if there was an answer, he would not still be on Mount Caucasus. The chains were not given by the king of gods, but by himself. I'd like to meet this great prophet sometime. Apollo's eyes fell on the opposite side of the bookshelf. There was a dressing table, and next to it was a closet, storing gorgeous or simple dresses. It turns out that the goddess of wisdom liked to dress up. The corners of Apollo's mouth twitched, and he walked quietly to the dressing table. Athena frowned slightly, and while she was watching, Apollo suddenly waved to the air somewhere around her dresser. She was a little puzzled. Taking the initiative to see her room was already very strange. What was he doing now? Feeling Athena's strange gaze, Apollo, who had put away the treasure chest, stood up indifferently and walked out step by step. Well, you are really clean here. If you have time, you can go to Sister Artemis and teach her how to dress up. Wow, aren't you afraid she'll fight me? Athena laughed lightly. In order to reassure Zeus, she took the initiative to trouble Artemis several times over the years. The relationship between the two was very tense. You also underestimate the wisdom of Sister Artemis. You think she can't see that you do it on purpose, and all these years, she's just cooperating with you. Apollo twisted his head and laughed. At the same time, he muttered in his heart, that if someone really dared to provoke her all the time, Artemis would have shot an arrow long ago. The tenderness of his sister had always been towards people close to her. In the face of others, they would only accept the cruelty of the goddess of hunting. In Delos Island, the prey that died under her arrows all died cleanly and thoroughly. So she did have me fooled, Athena said with a sudden flash of sharp color in her eyes. Apollo was heartbroken. This goddess of wisdom wouldn't have the intention of faking it, would she? She was forcing Artemis to bow down and be a sister so that she could behave and call herself a sister. Goddess Athena, why did you bring him here? An angry shout came steeply from a distance. Nike held a tea tray and stared at Apollo, who was not far from Athena's dressing table. Sister Artemis should miss me a lot. I'd better go see her first, see you some other time. Apollo immediately said goodbye to Athena and quickly walked out of the temple of the goddess of wisdom. When he left, he could still detect Nike's knife-like eyes staring at him from behind. Who is the main god in the end, Athena? You are not good at your command. With this in mind, Apollo walked to a corner and opened the advanced treasure chest he received from Athena. Ding that you have opened an advanced treasure chest and obtained Divine Origin Crystal *190, Divine Art Twilight Judgment, 2. Emerald of Dreams of the White King, 2. The White King. Isn't this the title of Euphoria, the goddess of Moon, who is listed as the goddess of the 9 pillars along with Oradro? Is this Jade of Dreams her token of love? As Apollo recalled, a colorful, dream-like jade necklace appeared in his palm. After looking at it for a while, he confirmed it. The Emerald of Dreams is said to be condensed by the essence of nature and has pure energy. My sister is not only the goddess of hunting but also the goddess of nature. If I give it to her, it should help her quickly advance to the main god. After receiving the divine art called Twilight Judgment with the divine origin crystals again, Apollo headed for Artemis' residence. Chapter 38. Apollo in the midst of starry sky. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Are you coming from Athena's temple? Standing in the garden, at first sight of Apollo, Artemis said quietly. Sister, aren't you acting seriously? Apollo felt that her tone was not quite right. In the garden, Artemis raised her eyes and said thoughtfully, I know how good she is, and it would be a good help to have a helper like her, but her mind is too deep. You try not to get too close to her. Apollo was stunned, he could sense that Artemis understood that Athena was acting. Therefore, he felt that Artemis' disobedience to Athena was also acting. He didn't expect that she really didn't like her. But Athena's mind was indeed difficult to guess, although she had shown herself to be very caring since they first met. But the most intelligent goddess of Olympus was by no means a simple character. Just like he couldn't figure out the details of her, he never really understood her. Apollo was deep in thought. When Artemis slowly approached him, her slender hands stroked his golden hair. She suddenly said in a thin voice. You have grown up and are now the main god. I think you will get a beautiful wife in the future and have many handsome children. Well, do not marry Athena. She thinks a lot. I think Hecate is good, quiet, attentive, and can take care of you. Astrea should be more gentle, and her words are worry-free. As she spoke, she nodded her head, her beautiful cheeks were thoughtful, and her eyes suddenly lit up. That Aphrodite from last time is actually okay, she is indeed the most beautiful goddess out there, and you deserve the best. It's just that she looked like a restless goddess, but I can discipline her for you when you marry her. I will soon be able to reach the main god. If Athena is the one, I'm afraid I won't be able to discipline her. Listening to her babbling words, Apollo couldn't help laughing. How could such a beautiful sister behave like an old mother? Do you think you are not strong enough, sister? I happen to have a gift for you here. Apollo took out the Emerald of Dreams. This is, Artemis' eyes flashed, and she said in surprise, what a strong power of nature. You should leave it to your future wife. I'll be fine with the heart of the deep sea. The heart of the deep sea is more suitable for oceanic gods, and helping you to promote to the main god would be its limit, but this Emerald of Dreams can help my sister to quickly advance several ranks after being promoted to the main god." Apollo smiled, stroked Artemis' jade neck, and put the dazzling necklace on her chest. Artemis' cheeks flushed a little, and she wanted to make a sound to refuse, but she could not say anything as she was gazed at by Apollo's gentle eyes. Under the gradually darkening sky, the gorgeous multicolored emeralds of dream quietly hung on the girl's full chest, complementing her snow-white skin. The shallow moonlight came quietly, and under the cold moonlight, a tall and slender girl with bright silver hair was filled with holy light, like a person walking out of a picture. Apollo looked a little obsessed and praised for a long time, "This necklace is created by fate, especially for sister. If it had not met sister, it would have no meaning to exist." Hearing his bold praise, Artemis was a little shy. In a voice as thin as a gnat, she said, "You have made me happy since I was a child. Don't always think about me when you have good things in the future. Keep more for yourself." In the moonlight, her face became sad. "Since I was a child, I expected to be able to outperform you so that I could stand in front and shield you from the storm. But now it seems that my brother is the most dazzling sun after all. How can the light of the silver moon block the color of the sun?" She raised her head and gazed at Apollo's cheek with eyes full of pride and love. Then she calmly said, "But no matter how the sun runs, the silver moon will always be behind him. We are twin spirits, and I will always be behind you." While walking away from Artemis, Apollo's heart was a little heavy. In the eyes of other gods, Artemis, the goddess of hunting, was very proud and cold, treating her prey with the same cruelty as nature. But in the face of the closest family members, she always loved so deeply. She made him feel guilty and pitiful. "No matter the future, we will be eternal twin spirits guarding each other." Gazing at the bright starry sky, Apollo abruptly flew out into the sky. Olympus was the highest mountain in the world. But no matter how tall the mountain was, there was not a height that he could not surpass. That was the height of the sky. But the stars were hanging in the sky. When he came to the lands of the gods, people always talked about Olympus, the ocean, the underworld, and the vast land ruled by the mother of the earth, Gaia. But only a few people had ever noticed the starry sky overhead. Since the first king of gods, Uranus, the god of starry sky, quit and disappeared, and the starry sky had lost its ruler. Until the birth of Astrea, the second-generation Titans, who gave birth to the stars of the sky with Eos, the goddess of the dawn. Et Venus Hesperos, Jupiter Phaeton, Mercury Stilben, Mars Pyroeus, Saturn Phaenon. All the dazzling suns ruled the stars for him. This god, whose reputation was seldom known, had thus become one of the most powerful rulers in this world. Poseidon and Oceanus wanted 3 parts of the ocean. But he alone dominated the vast starry sky, dominated the stars, and established his own side of the divine system. Even Zeus was completely unable to order him. Apollo was in the midst of the stars at this moment. He felt that every cell in his body was boiling, and the power of the etheric divine body was vibrating. This set of supreme divine bodies was created by simulating the power of the stars. Each particle that formed his body was seen as a star surrounded by many planets. The power of the stars flickered, forming galaxies. And billions of galaxies were combined to form a vast universe. One body, one universe. The etheric divine body had 3 realms, the stars, the galaxies, and the universe. Apollo was now pursuing the first realm. The debut of the power of the stars and the formation of the divine body particles. As soon as he stepped into the starry sky, a dignified purple-haired girl stood quietly in the starlight and looked at him calmly. "Apollo, welcome to the starry sky." Chapter 39. Apollo's first visit to majestic stars temple. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 39. Apollo's first visit to majestic stars temple, Astrea. "We meet after a long time," Apollo said lightly and flew towards the young girl. "Yes, it's been a long time, but I've heard about your extraordinary strength in recent years, and I've felt the scene of your promotion even in the starry sky. Astrea praised. Aren't you also promoted to the main god? Apollo gazed at her and saw the change in her divine power at a glance. That's different. I was only barely promoted when I was old enough to have my bloodline completely activated, and the visions didn't even reach across the stars, so how can I compare to you? Even Father God boast of your prominence. Astrea shook his head. Bdnvl.m, I just came here to meet the Lord of the Stars this time. It's a bit impossible to visit the Father God. Why? Apollo stared strangely at the shining maiden among the stars. Astrea's eyes lightened. Because Goddess Demeter just came to visit God Father. Goddess Demeter. Apollo was a little surprised. Demeter, the goddess of agriculture, was the second sister of Zeus, one of the main gods of Olympus, and the sixth wife of Zeus. But at the same time, she also had a relationship with Poseidon. The most profound impression she gave Apollo was that the system map showed that there was an advanced treasure chest in her temple. I originally planned to visit her temple sometime in order to get the treasure chest, but now I can make an appointment in advance. Apollo thought for a moment, and a smile appeared on his face. Astrea, that would be just right. My Aunt Hestia and I have had a conversation, but I haven't said much with Aunt Demeter, so this time we can get in touch. Well, I forgot that Goddess Demeter is the elder sister of the King of Gods. Astrea nodded and took Apollo to the depth of the starry sky. The stars were twinkling and shining brightly. A majestic temple stood in the place where the stars were intertwined, emitting a majestic aura. This is the majestic temple of stars of the Father God. Astrea led Apollo into the gate. At this point, several lively teenagers with hair of different colors ran out laughing and smiling. Sister Astrea, is this blonde-haired god the one you keep mentioning as the god of light? One of the fiery red-haired teenagers was the first to ask. Astrea blushed and stole a glance at Apollo and found that Apollo's face did not change much, which was reassuring. Her eyes stared at several teenagers. Pyroeus, you are the most talkative, go to the mother goddess to exercise your divine power, and the four of you, Eurus, Phaeton, Stilbon, and Phaenon, will also follow. Don't, Sister Astrea, you used to be the most gentle. Does it mean a goddess becomes fierce when she has someone in her heart? The faces of the teenagers suddenly collapsed. I said, go to the mother goddess. Astrea drove them away. When the teenagers left, Apollo asked, these are your star god brothers? Astrea nodded. They're all people who make me worry. I really envy Artemis for having a brother like you. I heard that you have 4 other wind god brothers. You mean the 4 of them, Boreas, Hesperos, Notus, and Zephyrus. They're not as cute as a few of the Pyroeus, they're all disgraceful guys. Astrea frowned. Seeing that she didn't seem to want to say more, Apollo stopped the conversation. Boreas, the god of the north wind, Zephyrus, the god of the west wind, Notus, the god of the south wind, and Hesperos, the god of the east wind. They were all the sons of her father, Astreus, lord of the stars. But it seems that they left the stars early, not to go to Mount Olympus but to take refuge in the hands of Gaia, the mother of the earth. The grandmother of the gods, the primordial goddess with the highest status and most honorable status among the gods, had never been in existence who liked to be peaceful. In the past generations of divine court rule, her intervention was crucial. You're Apollo. Before stepping into the main hall of the Temple of the Stars with Astrea, a plump and beautiful woman in a green skirt walked towards him. Seeing Apollo's first glance, she made a sound. Apollo also immediately greeted her. Aunt Demeter, since I came to Mount Olympus, this must be our first meeting. Yeah, I've been busy taking care of my Persephone all these years, and I'm so sorry for not being able to visit you and your sister. A look of shame appeared on Demeter's face. To say that it is also me who is wrong, as a junior, should have visited Aunt as soon as I ascended to Olympus. Apollo blamed himself. Demeter looked at Apollo with embarrassment and said, "You are such a polite and good boy, and Sister Hera did go too far in her conspiracy. It is good that the king of gods found out instantly and took you back to Olympus." First, she accused Hera a few times, and then she whirled around and said, "Go to my palace sometime and get closer to Persephone, she is also your sister." Apollo smiled and said, "Sure, when I return from the Lord of the Stars, I will visit my aunt." Demeter nodded, glanced at Apollo and Astrea, and praised. "You are really a good match. Are you here to see the Lord of the Stars for this matter? I will talk to Leto, my sister, shouldn't this kind of thing be up to her?" Halfway through speaking, she suddenly noticed that Astrea's white cheeks became extremely flushed, and she stopped her voice. She laughed lightly twice, gave Apollo a look, and then turned into a stream of light and left quickly. When she left, Astrea slowly regained her composure and said to Apollo, "Let's go in to see the Father God." Looking at her face full of embarrassment, Apollo suddenly said, "Before coming here, Sister Artemis told me that Astrea has a gentle and considerate nature and would make a great wife if I could marry you." "How can Sister Artemis say that?" In front of the lofty temple gate, Astrea lowered her head anxiously and asked, in a small voice full of hope, "Then what do you think?" Staring at her bright eyes, Apollo said earnestly, "I think what Sister Artemis said is quite right." In an instant, the surrounding starlight trembled and flickered several times. And Apollo strode into the front hall. Only then did Astrea gather the courage to raise her eyes, brighter than the stars, to gaze at his golden back. The corners of her mouth overflowed with joy as she murmured, "So you think I'm good too, this, very nice." Chapter 40. Lightning of Starry Sky. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the majestic temple of stars, thousands of stars were surging. A tall figure sat on the uppermost throne, bathed in bright stars. Gazing upward, Apollo gently saluted. "Apollo meets the Lord of the Stars." "You are Apollo." A majestic voice came from above as if the stars were in motion. Astreus, the Lord of the Stars, dressed in a star robe, his brow full of majestic dignity, looked at the blonde god with deep eyes. Then he whispered, "Zeus is really favored by fate. First Athena, and then you. The most outstanding young people among the gods are his children. I just don't know whether this is lucky or unfortunate for him." Apollo was about to speak when Astreus said first, "I don't like to participate in the affairs of the gods, so I didn't participate in Amphitrite's last proposal. If you are young and can't bear it, then just think more about it when you do it. Young gods, the future must be yours, but I hope you can take good care of my daughter and don't let her be wronged and hurt." A deep, mighty force suddenly shrouded down from above. Apollo's golden eyes flashed. The aurora field activated, and the main god's third order divine power and etheric divine body all erupted, converging into a strong force near the limit of the main god. Puff! The peerless aura condensed by the light of the stars was broken in a flash of light. "Lord of the Stars, is this strong enough to make you trustworthy?" Apollo silently stared at the stars above. The figure of Astreus shrouded in the brilliance of the stars shook abruptly. The star-like eyes gazed down, and he said in a low voice, "Young god, it seems that I underestimated you, but that father of yours is also by no means a simple existence, especially since he also holds the secret of destiny." "Destiny, what the hell is that?" Apollo's brows furrowed. Under the shroud of starlight, Astreus, who was sitting high on the throne, was silent for a long time before answering. The answer to this question, apart from the 3 generations of the King of Gods, perhaps only the 5 oldest and most powerful ones can answer it. Apollo pondered for a moment and said to Astreus, "I have one thing I want to ask the Lord of the Stars for help this time." "What is it?" Astreus asked. The test just now made him understand. The seemingly young god in front of him possessed a power that was in no way inferior to his own, who had been in charge of the stars for thousands of years. It's no wonder that he seemed to be gentle but actually reserved and arrogant daughter would never forget him after meeting him in such a short period of time. What would such a god have to ask for help? Apollo's body suddenly filled with the light of the etheric divine body, and at the same time, the energy he named Do-Chi emerged. The Lord of the Stars should know that Hecate has created a special power called magic that can perform the transcendent power without using your divine power and priesthood. Astrius nodded. Yes, I heard Astrius say that you are even better than Hecate in attaining magic. Is this the power of magic? That would be an overstatement. Hecate's talent is overwhelming, but with magical attainment, I dare not claim to be superior to her. However, this power is not magic either. It is another thing that I have uniquely created that does not require divine power and priesthood and can be extremely powerful. I named it Do-Qi. Do-Chi. Astrius whispered the name and was surprised. What does this have to do with asking me to help? Apollo smiled and said. Do-Chi is a unique power that I have developed recently. I have studied it to a certain extent and found that to continue to increase its power, it needs the assistance of the power of the stars. So that's the reason for your visit. That's easy. Astrius agreed readily, and he was curious about what kind of power the so-called Do-Qi was. Seeing that he agreed, Apollo heaved a sigh of relief. In fact, the so-called Do-Chi was formed after he simplified the power of the etheric divine body and simplified it many times. His weakest Do-Chi was called Black Iron Do-Chi, above which were Bronze Do-Chi, Silver Do-Chi, and Gold Do-Chi. After reaching the level of Golden Do-Chi, to go further will have to accept the baptism of the stars and awaken the true power of the etheric divine body, to reach a level comparable to that of the gods. He developed this power system because he found that enormous resources and energy were needed to cultivate the etheric divine body. If he could spread this Do-Chi system and let the others train together. When they reach the star's baptism, the etheric power will naturally gather on the vaster etheric divine body. They would not connect to the stars of the Greek world but would hook up to the particle stars inside Apollo, who had reached the realm of the stars. That way, from then on, when they cultivate Do-Chi, all of them will have great power integrated into Apollo's body. Everyone was cultivating for him and helping him to reach the realm of the galaxy and even the universe as soon as possible. I'm not in a hurry to spread Do-Chi. At present, I haven't fully set foot in the realm of stars. Although only I have a real etheric divine body, other people can't counteract me when they cultivate Do-Chi to a strong level, but it is better to be safe. While thinking this, Astrius called his sons, including the previous 5 of Boreas and numerous other star gods. Apollo followed them to the stars. These star gods all flew to the starry sky one by one and merged into the stars. Astria's face was solemn as she said to Apollo, "Be careful. The power of the stars flashing together will be one of the wildest power in this world. Are you sure you can withstand it?" Standing next to him, Astria also had a worried look on her face. But she didn't say anything to stop it because she knew that Apollo had always been a very stable person. Now that he had decided, no one will be able to shake his will either. Gazing at the infinite starry sky, Apollo calmly said, "Lord of the stars, please begin." Without further ado, Astria's figure suddenly turned into infinite starlight and merged into the entire starry sky. At the same time, Venus Hesperos, Jupiter Phaeton, Mercury Stilben, Mars Pyroeus, and Saturn Phaenon, the 5 most important stars among these, twinkled first, followed by the other stars. In Mount Olympus, in the vast land, in the vast ocean, in the deep underworld. Both gods and mortals couldn't help but look at the starry sky at this moment. The billions of years of eternal stars above their heads suddenly flashed tonight. The fantastic stars light up the sky.